In Israel, hospitals can be deadly. Up to 6,000 patients in Israel die from complications of hospital-acquired infections every year, according to Israel's health ministry. This while a further 40,000 hospital patients in Israel are adversely affected by what are known as nosocomial infections, or diseases originally taken place in a hospital. Now, this report was kept secret from the public since 2013. The primary causes behind the spread of infections in hospitals are poor hand hygiene, a lack of hospital visitor awareness regarding the spread of infections, hospital environmental conditions, an insufficient number of healthcare workers, and inadequate isolation of patients with infectious diseases.
Yeah, this is called iatrogenic disease, a disease that is acquired while you're in a hospital or being treated by a doctor of some kind. And this relates to the fact that the Israeli state is a war state. Imagine a hospital being run by the mafia. Do you think that the people who run such a facility are truly concerned about the patients, or is it run as a money laundering scheme? This is how you have to approach everything that's done by the Israelis.
The new health ministry report ranked Israeli hospitals according to the rate of hospital-acquired infections per 100,000 patient days. With that in mind, Hasharon Hospital had 161 infections per 100,000 patient days, Bnai Zion Medical Center 156, Rabin Medical Center 132, and Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv, which had 107 infections per 100,000 patient days. These hospitals ranked the highest with infections per 100,000 patient days from a list of dozens of others compiled by Israel's health ministry. Ichilov Hospital, for example, is located in the heart of the Israeli capital, Tel Aviv, and it is relatively new. In fact, it was inaugurated just 3 years ago in 2016 and made a big splash in Israeli media as one of the most modern hospitals, with authorities even boasting about its safety in the event of a chemical attack.
We have protected gases and oxygen and electricity. You have the oxygen, electricity, you have air conditioning. It's fully protected from chemical attack because it's positive pressure filtered air. So you can lock down and actually function during a chemical attack.
Shortly after the release of the Daunting report by Israel's health ministry, Israeli media have in recent weeks touted their healthcare system with old images of France's former health minister Marisol Touraine, who boasted of Israel's experience poor hygiene that could have prevented the infections of potentially thousands of patients was disregarded by Israeli practitioners. The bacteria make their way into the bloodstream via catheters that are inserted into the skin and handed by personnel who fail to take sanitary precautions in many cases. These infections may also cause disabilities, lengthening of hospitalization times, and repeat hospitalizations. It is possible to prevent many of these cases by ensuring hand hygiene and hygienic treatment environment, according to the World Health Organization.
And admits that there is more attention to equity considerations and economic considerations than potential impacts on the healthcare system. This is admitted to by the Israelis' own healthcare bureaucracy. Okay, so the reason it's inefficient and uncaring is around the world. Big bureaucracies are uncaring and inefficient, and it's no different in the Israeli state.
According to Israeli Deputy Health Minister Yaakov Litzman, the infections in hospitals are an epidemic that is threatening the Israeli healthcare. According to estimations, the infections rate in Israeli hospitals is significantly higher than in hospitals in Europe and the US. The issues in Israeli hospitals and the healthcare system there also seems to be growing. Measles, which is on the decline globally, has skyrocketed in the number of those infected in Israel. A recent measles outbreak that began in Israel in 2018 saw over 4,000 measles cases compared to only 30 back in 2017. The outbreak began in one of the hospitals in Tel Aviv, accused of having poor hygiene. So far, 2 Israelis have died in the measles outbreak. Israel's measles outbreak also hit New York. The first child diagnosed was an unvaccinated ultra-Orthodox Israeli Jew who was infected while visiting Israel, where an outbreak of the highly infectious virus has been wreaking havoc on public health protocols. Apparently, the measles spread in elementary schools. U.S. authorities shut down several Jewish schools in New York for refusing to provide medical records of students. They also announced measures barring all unvaccinated children and adolescents from public places.
If it's someone who we state that must be home, they're required to be home because they had an exposure or because they have the measles and we find out they're out, that would be the parents that would be responsible. For the second order, I know we have the 2 today, we will be looking at the school administrators, that they shouldn't be in school.
I'm sorry, so do you get the names from the schools? How are you coming up with these names?
Every Friday, I have a list that's presented. That I mentioned, we have 100% compliance to date. I have the list of all the school students who are excluded from each school.
We're saying you cannot leave under penalty of $2,000 per day for violation. Now, if you choose to leave and go out, you risk that, number one. Number two, there's something called liability. If you are under a directive of the Health Commission not to go out and you infect someone, or if you're part of a situation that people get infected, you have liability issues.
Here, the Israeli-American community in New York gave their take on the measles outbreak that has become a national issue in the U.S.
People get the vaccine. But there are some people who have some severe reactions of the vaccine and they won't give it. There is a small amount of these people. Just Williamsburg people, they have a lot of children, so here it's more. There is everywhere in the world such people.
It's true that a lot of people have measles, and measles is not a very good thing, but I think the vaccine is also not a very good thing, and it's everybody's option to do what he wants.
People are beginning to question, why should I subject my 3-year-old to toxins when it's not going to protect him or her, or when they're needed in childbearing age, they will not be protected against measles.
People should be vaccinated?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because this is health. That's it.
Is there anything in Jewish Talmudic teachings that says you should not get a vaccine?
No.
Infections taking place in Israeli hospitals reveal troubling health practices and a system that allows millions of Israelis to get away with not getting vaccinated. At least 25% of the Israeli population are either unvaccinated or are partially vaccinated for the measles, according to a Channel 13 report. Also, 10% of Israelis who receive inpatient hospital treatments are left in hospital hallways during their stay, paving the way for infections to spread, according to Israel's health ministry. Israel seems to have challenges with regards to international standards on hospital sanitation and turning a blind eye on immunization standards to stop the spread of disease. This has shown the negative global implications as millions of Israelis hold dual or more citizenships and travel to many parts of the world, thus heightening the risk of exposure to infections.